Hello everyone, and welcome back to Tales from a Traveling Writer. It's actually been pretty slow lately. I've been making the circuit of farmers markets and fall fairs, getting pictures of fall foliage and picking apples before the cold can kill them. Truth be told, I'd rather be down in Florida, not freezing my ass off, but I suppose that everyone has to go through a little bit of discomfort from time to time. My agent hasn't had a lot of work for a guy who writes about spooky stuff lately, so I've been moonlighting as a regular old writer, talking about fall and taking in the sights. I was sitting at a Motel 6 a couple of days ago, doing a write-up on how John Augusta's apple cider is about the best apple cider I've ever drank in my whole gosh darn life, which I'm sure isn't true, but nobody really cares, when I got a call from my editor that I just knew was going to send me somewhere weird. "Hey, Chuck, it's your editor. I hope you're ready to see some sights because I've got a doozy for you." I leaned back in my chair and cocked my leg on my knee, waiting for him to tell me he had some kind of, three-headed pig or a hotel that was haunted by the ghosts of an old string quartet or something. My editor has been a little stingy lately, but I suppose it was time to hop back in the saddle and write what paid the bills. "What you got for me?" "Well, got a little town in Virginia that's kind of got a weird history. It once claimed to be the home of the world's largest pumpkin, but now it's more like a ghost town than anything. The editor over at your usual correspondence has been keeping an eye on it for a while, but the last guy they sent over to have a look at it seems to have never come back. He says you've had some luck with these sorts of things and thought you might be just the man for the job." "Spooky," I told him sarcastically. "So I guess if I turn up missing, maybe the next guy you send over can finish up the story, right?" "Try not to go missing, Chuck. I got winter fairs coming up next month, and I could really use a guy on the street to go have a look at them." I told him I'd do my best, and he sent me the details on the town in question. I could have got my write-up from the stories, he told me, but I would need to go out there and have a look if I wanted to get the pictures that the magazine wanted. So I took a bus. My funds are a little low right now, and as I settled in next to people who were sleeping or talking or just playing on their phone, I read up on the town I was heading to. I hoped none of them were catching any of this through osmosis because it would probably have led to some pretty interesting nightmares. The town of Glattis, Virginia is about as rural as it gets. During its best years, it had about 7,500 people, and most of them were farmers or people working on the farms. There were over a dozen large farms in the area, and most of them dealt in livestock or vegetables. The town was small, one of those 5-stoplight kind of places, and at its best, it was little more than a gas stop on the way to somewhere else. As of right now, the town has no living residents that anyone knows of. It's been abandoned, and they say even the homeless people won't camp there. Main Street sits abandoned. The school has been locked up for about 2 generations, and it's all because of a town attraction known as the world's largest pumpkin. I saw a picture of the town during its heyday, and I couldn't believe they lived in the shadow of something that large. The pumpkin was, it was massive, easily 7 stories tall and at least half as wide. The picture showed it sitting in a farmer's field, blooming over everything like some kind of old god. It was massive, intimidating, and not exactly what you would expect to see in a town that size. The reason I was going was that they felt like the pumpkin was also linked to multiple disappearances. They didn't actually believe the giant pumpkin had made people disappear. No, they believed it was the man behind the pumpkin that was responsible for the disappearances. Clarence Morgan had owned that farm for nearly 100 years. His father had left it to him after his death, and he'd been a local figure of some notoriety. He was a well-known farmer and had won the pumpkin contest several years running. Before the appearance of the world's largest pumpkin, however, he'd been rivals with another local named David Decker. David Decker had been another well-known farmer who had won many agricultural contests and fairs in the area. Not long before Clarence had won his first pumpkin contest, David Decker went missing under some pretty mysterious circumstances. His wife said that she had woken up to discover he was missing. There had been a search for him that had stretched over several counties, but nobody ever saw David Decker again. He was not the last one to go missing, though. Reggie Studebaker, who owned a local agricultural store in the town, also went missing that same year. The police suspected that David had something to do with it. Reggie and he were good friends, but they never had any evidence to support it. After that, people would go missing from the annual pumpkin patch that was held at Clarence's farm. People went missing at the county fairs when the pumpkin was taken around. Clarence's wife had also gone missing not long after, but it seemed like nobody was putting it together that Clarence was involved. If they did, they weren't looking very hard because they never found any evidence of him being connected. The strange part was, there was nothing to report that Clarence had died. He would be mighty old by now, and couldn't imagine that he was still sitting on the farm and taking pictures with the occasional tourist that might wander up. When we pulled into Fairfax, I rented a car and drove the 2 hours to go see this abandoned town. The countryside was pretty, as countrysides are usually wont to be. It almost seemed like somewhere there was a rule that if your countryside is going to be rural, then it needs to be picturesque. There have to be cows happily grazing out in a field, or corn growing amongst a small army of scarecrows, or a barn with something inspirational or goofy written on it. I like to imagine there's some kind of council that has to approve these things, but honestly, it's probably just poor farmers. I know if I lived out in a place like this, I'd probably get bored enough to spray paint some different scene from the movie Shrek on the side of my barn, too. But it didn't really distract me as much as I was hoping it would while I drove to Glattis. The reports said that the disappearances didn't really stop once people left the area. You would get missing tourists, called in every now and again by their worried families. In 2014, a school bus with the national runners-up in football had gone missing in the area, and it was believed that they might have taken a wrong turn and ended up in Glattis. People's families sometimes came to see why they never called or wrote anymore. Debt collectors came and tried to bring money out of people who weren't there anymore. Most of these people did not come back out of Glattis once they found it. And that was how the mystery had taken off. People online kept telling the curious not to go to Glattis. They told them there was something weird going on there, and that if they went there, they should be prepared to never come out again. Some of them listened, some of them didn't. Most of them had joined the ranks of the missing and presumed dead. Somebody had said the cops didn't even go to Glattis anymore. If a report said that someone went missing in the area, they just sent their condolences and threw the files in the trash can. I don't know if I believe that, but it certainly makes a good story. It wasn't until I came to the outskirts of the town that I started to think there might be more than rumors to the place. The farms that surrounded Glattis are abandoned, but not really the way you'd think. They're like time capsules in a museum. You can see barns that are getting ready to fall to the ground. You can see fields choked with vegetation, going to riot, which would probably need a whole fleet of yard tractors to get them back again. The streets are cracked and pitted as if no one has done road work in a long time. It's not a gradual thing. There's a spot right by the sign that says you're entering the town where the road just kind of turns to shit. It's abrupt, just like everything else around here, and I was a little worried about what I might find when I finally rolled into town. I made a mental note to tell him that this should have been his Halloween piece. The town isn't just spooky, it's haunted. None of the windows are broken. None of the street lamps are destroyed. There's no graffiti on the walls. There's no garbage just lying around. The place looks like you could start a town here tomorrow, but nobody would show up to live there willingly. The place feels like you're being watched, no matter where you are. It's very spooky, and as I rolled up the main street, I could see cars that had just been abandoned outside of storefronts. There were doors that were still open, just waiting for customers to come in. At the diner, I could see that it simply has food left on the table by diners who discovered they had somewhere else to be. Reggie's Veggies was still there, the whole place looking like a toothless mouth just waiting to chomp. The whole place was so unsettling that I couldn't imagine what it would have felt like to live here with that giant pumpkin looming over everything. It didn't take a lot to find the farm, and I was surprised to find that it was still there. Not just there, it was intact. The town and the farms around it had a run-down look, the look of a place that's ready to sink back into the earth. Clarence Morgan's farm looked as if someone was still taking care of it. The lawn was cut, the lights were on, and there's still a sign out front that says, "Come meet the world's largest pumpkin." Someone had marked out the word largest, however, and instead put oldest in its place. I wondered what that was about, and it took everything I had to open the door and climb out into the dank air of Glattis, Virginia. I wanted to drive away, to get my pictures from the safety of my vehicle. Something about the place felt wrong. It seemed like if I just stayed in my car, then I might be safe. If I let whatever was in the air pass the seal on the door of my car, then I might get infected with whatever had taken all these people. And that would be when I go off and never come back again. I reminded myself that if I didn't get decent pictures, then I could kiss my paycheck goodbye. And I got out of the car and walked towards the stand that invited me to come see the world's oldest pumpkin. They weren't kidding. The pumpkin in the case was a real Methuselah of a gourd. It was about the size of a tomato, its skin bruised looking as if hunkered in that glass box. It looked ready to fall to pieces if even a puff of air should come in to touch it, but it was the strangest thing. I felt moved to touch it. The closer I got to the case, the more I could hear something in my head. It was a wheedling little voice that told me to come and break the glass and just take it. It told me how I could have my own 70-story tall pumpkin. It told me how I could live forever, how it could help me do anything I wanted. It was a sly voice, a voice like the one Eve had heard when she ate the apple, and I felt almost powerless to stop myself. When a wrinkled old hand caught me around the wrist as I reached out to open the case, it was almost a relief. The owner of the hand was no less impressively old than the pumpkin. He was hunched, a shrunken man who would probably have once been very tall and very strong. He wore overalls and a straw hat, his cuffs revealing pale and shrunken feet He looked horrified, as if he had looked away for only a second, and now something terrible was about to happen. And as he led me away from the pumpkin, I heard that voice telling me to push the old man down and take it. He was an old man, after all, and what did it matter? I could take the pumpkin and live forever, and this old man couldn't stop me if I wanted it. It said a lot of things, a lot of very terrible things, but I finally gotten far enough back that I could no longer hear it, and that was good. It was good because the longer I listened to it, the more it felt like I was going insane. "Tricky old devil," the old farmer said, as he brought me a safe distance away. "I go inside to use the bathroom for 5 minutes, and he nearly tricked somebody else into freeing him. I'm sorry, son. I keep putting up signs, and then somehow they keep disappearing. I imagine you've come a long way to see the world's largest and oldest pumpkin, but you've probably also guessed that he's dangerous. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, but we need to stay far enough back that he can't fiddle around inside your head." "Thanks," I said shakily. For a minute there, I thought he was going to get me. The old man took a seat in my back seat, and as I sat in the front and pulled out my steno pad, he told me all about the pumpkin. He said it was a blood pumpkin, something he'd gotten from a friend a long, long time ago. He said it had brought him great fortune and great notoriety, but that it had taken everything from him in exchange. He was now the only resident of Glattis, because the pumpkin had taken them all to the soil, and one by one, it had taken them into the ground and devoured them. "I won't let him have anyone else. I keep him behind the glass case. It's harder for him to get at people that way. Sometimes he still tricks people, but it's been years since he's had a decent meal. Nobody comes to Glattis, not in a long time, and his power has begun to dry up. I'm hoping that someday he'll wither away to nothing but an angry little seed, and then I can do something about him for good. Till then, I keeps my vigil here. He's my responsibility. I did this. Now I have to pay the consequences as well." I asked him if he was Clarence Morgan. He said no one had called him that in a very long time. I asked him how old he was, and he said he was young enough to keep an eye on that hateful pumpkin. I asked him why he didn't just destroy the pumpkin if it was such a hassle, and he laughed and asked me if I thought he had never tried that. I asked him why he stayed, and he said because somebody had to protect people from that thing. I got some pictures. Careful to use the zoom lens on my camera. And I got some pictures of the town on the way out, too. As I sit here writing this article, I'm very conflicted on whether or not I should give it to my editor. It's a good piece. It'll probably sell a lot of papers, but it might bring people to Glattis, and I'm not sure that's a good thing. The people this pumpkin comes into contact with, they change something. The more people that come, the more chances there is that he can get a hold of them and get them to do his bidding. Clarence Morgan is an old man now. No matter how long he lives, I have to think his days are probably numbered. He's been through a lot, and I wonder if he could hold somebody off who was bound and determined that they were going to get their hands on that pumpkin. Suppose if you see this article the next time you read one of my magazines, you'll know I sent it in. If not, then do yourself a favor and don't look for Glattis, Virginia. The sights here are wondrous, but they definitely come at a cost.
Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's show. If you think you might like a little more spooky in your life, then please feel free to click on one of the videos we have up here. Maybe look at one of the playlists if you're trying to get caught up. I know, there's so many videos on the channel, so many series that are going at the same time. Sometimes you just need a little refresher course, and I gotta say, I always enjoy the views. If you're not subscribed, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Maybe hit the bell so you don't miss anything. We upload a lot on this channel, so you won't want to miss a single story as they come out. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click on the Amazon link down there. There's quite a few books in my Amazon account. You can have a look, and if you'd like a signed copy, get up with me through email, and I'll be happy to work something out with you. Also, there's links to my Patreon, and you can become a member on the channel if you'd like your spooky a little bit early. Patrons and members on the $5 tier get their videos 12 hours early. That's in the morning as opposed to in the evening. Patrons at the $10 level also get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one. Speaking of my patrons, you should see them appearing right now. Just wanted to take a minute to say how much I appreciate all of you. Patrons, subscribers, however you give to the channel. I really appreciate everything you do, and it truly touches me that you have chosen to support the channel in this way. Well, that's enough for now. Till next time, Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.